So without further ado, I introduce to you my dearest friend, Lou Pechi.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and I want to introduce myself to you. And if you look at here, my name is Lubo. And Lubo in Croatian means love. Oh, you want to, can you hear me? Or
Oh yeah, much better.
Okay.
And then when you're done, you can stick it in here.
All right, well, I talk with my hands, so this is going to be... Anyway, but I had to hide my name. I had to hide my religion. I had to hide my identity. But I was always surrounded by love. And it's the love of the people that risk their lives to save mine is the reason that I'm here. Now, I've been speaking mostly to young people, 14, 15, 16, and what I talk to them, and hopefully it'll work for you guys. You've heard about time travel. Well, you can't time travel into the future because it hasn't happened. But you can travel back in time. And so what I like to do is take all of you with me, and we'll travel back to 1941 to my hometown, Zagreb, in Croatia. And before we travel, we got to look at the map, because if you don't, we're never going to get there. So here's a map of the Yugoslavia, old Yugoslavia, which is the kind of a liver-shaped country. Nowadays, if you look on the map, it's divided in about 7 or different places, with Bosnia and Serbia and Montenegro and Croatia and Slovenia. They split, you know. We all talk about the same language, like Serbian and Croatian is the same language. It's a phonetic language. So I never went through a spelling bee as a kid, because if you can write the letter, you can pronounce the word, okay? So we saved their own thing. So anyway, I was born in Zagreb, 1934, and we'll get into my family. I'll introduce you to family, but I just want to go over some major points that we'll travel back there in 1941. Brod is a little provincial town. I spent some time there. And Belgrade, I also spent some time there. Not too well, but you'll hear. Okay? And then there's a town here that's on the border between Croatia and Italy. And on one side, Rijeka means river. And on the other side, in Italian, Fiume means river. So, and that was the border at that time. And then Treviso is a little provincial town in Italy, and we'll get there eventually too. And then Venice, Rome, and then some more off the map, okay? So, before I get started, I want to introduce you. 1940, in the 40s, you'll see, hang on. Okay, here we are at the photographer, okay? Now, here's me waiting for the birdie to come out. I'm all excited. I'm happy. I'm having a good time. But look at my mom and look at my dad. They're serious. They know what's going on. Up north, Hitler invading Poland, Hitler invading Czechoslovakia, and looking over the fence on Yugoslavia. Actually, the reason that he did invade Yugoslavia was because he wanted to get to the fields of Greece. And to get to there, he had to go through Yugoslavia, because Greece was, the British were there, and they were within the flying zone to where the Romanian oil fields. And he needed the oil fields so that he could go and invade Russia. So before he went to Russia, he stopped and decided to go after Yugoslavia. And we'll get to that too. So let me introduce you to my family, my mom's family. And here we are This is my grandfather, my mother's father, my maternal grandparent. This is my grandmother. I never met her. She passed away before I was even a thought in somebody's eye. And here is my aunt Rozhika, the two older uncle and aunt. Okay, now that's her son Srečko, and pay attention because we'll meet Srečko later on in my presentation. And here's my uncle Larry. We call him Laci. Most of my family spoke Hungarian as a second language. Actually, my grandfather was a supply officer in the Austrian army, Austro-Hungarian army during World War I. And then this is my Uncle Mark. And who do you think is that? That's my mom. Wait a minute. Why does she have her head shaven? Well, she palled with her older brother, 1 year older, and they always used to use my mom to test the ice if it was good enough to skate. Inevitably, she fell in. So she was a tomboy. She really palled with her older brother, and in this case, she caught lice. And in those days, when you caught lice, you got your head shaven and you get rubbed with kerosene. Okay? And I want you to remember Srečko, because I said that Srečko was my cousin, and you'll meet him later on. Okay? Have some pretty good pictures of. Okay. So here they are at my favorite holiday, which is Purim. And in Purim, we celebrate the liberation of the Jews from Mesopotamia. They were exiled from Israel to Mesopotamia, and Queen Esther is the one that kind of liberated them. And here's my mom with her hair, okay? She looks a little bit better. And everybody dresses in what they believe the people wore in those days. I loved that holiday. That was my favorite holiday. And because I get to dress in my hero's clothes and be my hero. And you can tell who that is, Popeye. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be big. I was just a little kid. And if you gave me a bowl of spinach, I eat it. But my mom and my aunts who raised me, they made the spinach that any one of you would just love it, because it wasn't just boiled and put a little bit of oil on it. It was really creamy spinach. So I used to I looked forward to that holiday. We weren't very religious. My dad only went to the synagogue on high holidays, but this was one holiday that I definitely celebrated. So besides that, I was performing. Here I am, head of the Chocolate Soldiers. The rest of the soldiers were all little girls. I was the only boy. So they made me the head of the group. And life was good for me. If you look here, there's my mom. You can see she's dressed very well. The purse she has is a real alligator. In those days, you could catch alligators and make purses out of them, rather than the other way around. And you see, I'm on a bike. Now, people didn't even have bikes, okay? But my dad was an import-export broker, and he would travel to Italy, he would travel to Germany, and inevitably when he came back, he would bring toys. I still remember playing with those toys where you wind them up and you let them run around. But I would do that and play with them, and then I wanted to get to know what's inside, what makes them run. And I would take them apart, and my poor dad had to put them together, but you can't because they're made out of tin. And if you open that little flap twice, it's broken. It's done. So he came back once with a bicycle. So I had a nice bike. Kids didn't have any bikes like that. So, and we had a good life. Here we are in France at the beach, and there's my mom, and there I am. We're all headed to the beach, and that's my friends of a family, and everybody that was an adult was an uncle or an aunt. So this is Annika and Milan. Now, I'll just tell you just how I felt as a kid. Milan shows up. We were going to the beach, and he shows up in the pajamas. And I said, Uncle Milan, we're going to the beach. Why are you not coming with us? He says, no, I'm coming with you. I said, but you're in your pajamas. You can't go out in the pajamas. He says, but I have a trick. I have, under the pajamas, I have my bathing suit. And I don't have to pay for the changing booth. I just take off my pajamas, and I thought that was the greatest thing. Uncle Milan was he was my protagonist, if you want to call it. He always teased me. And he taught me this dirty Yugoslav song, okay? And I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew that whenever I sang the song, everybody would laugh. And so we came back to Zagreb, and I was singing, everybody wanted me to sing the dirty song. And he would always taunt me too. And he became like a real uncle. Even later during the war, he was with us, so we kept together. All right, so but there was one person that was a thorn in my life, and that was my nanny. She was Austrian, and she believed in a nice slap if you misbehave. And she had the longest hands. I could be there, and somehow she would hit me. But, I learned a lot from her. I spoke fluent German with her, but she spoke only German to me. She taught me how to properly eat with a knife. She told me what to do with my clothes, brush my teeth, and how to set up the table and so on. So I learned a lot from her. And her speaking German came in very handy later on in my life. So everything came to an end. 1941, I was 7 years old. And my mom decided to go to Belgrade to visit my grandfather and my two uncles. And so we came to Belgrade, and here's it's more than 70 years ago. Okay, that's an old movie. And here's Belgrade, beautiful town. It was beautiful. They were just waking up. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. So I set up and here is a Sava River, and on top is the Danube. That's where they meet. So I sit up and listen. A strange buzzing sound, like a nest of angry hornets, is coming from outside. I wonder, what is making all that noise? I put on my slippers and run into the balcony. I grab the cold railing with both my hands and look up. The early morning sky is clear. The strange sound is coming from the horizon, where the blue meets the gray outline of the city. It's filled with black specks moving toward me. The tiny dots move closer and grow bigger. They start to resemble the formation V of like migrating geese. As they get closer, I realize they're not geese. They are tiny airplanes. I never saw so many airplanes. Where did they come from? And what are they doing? One of the plane starts dropping bombs and dives toward the ground. I cover my ears and run back in and collide with my Uncle Larry. I feel safe in his warm body embrace. What's the matter, Lubo? What's going on? The planes are falling from the sky. They're screaming for help. They will crash. And he hugged me, and right away we wanted to go down into the basement. My uncle was, by the way, he was a captain in the reserve, Serbian Army Reserve. And my mom wanted to take the elevator, and I said, no. We got to take the stairs. And so we came in, opened the door, and people were already sitting there. Although everybody was there, it was dark. And we just joined them and heard all these explosions, okay? Luckily, no explosions was in our building. And this is not the picture. I found a picture that kind of reminded me of what I saw. Our building was not hit, but if you notice, the building across the street was almost demolished. I still remember a bathtub hanging by the pipes, and on the street right down below was a horse that got caught in it. And I still remember seeing his guts, and my uncle just hugged me. He is the one that kind of took care of me. And the bombing was over. Luckily, we survived. There were about 70,000 people killed in Belgrade. Most of them were civilians. There was no military. Why did Hitler bomb Belgrade? Because Yugoslavia first joined the Axis, and then there was a revolt, and they went back and reneged on the agreement. And he also needed Yugoslavia to get to Greece so they could get after the British airplanes that would have bombed the oil fields. Well, what do you think people do after a bombing? Well, guess what my mom wanted to do? She wanted to get back to Zagreb, where we had the apartment. She wanted to get back home. And so everybody goes to the railroad station. My uncle found out there was a train leaving. And so my mom puts a bandana on and a backpack. I had my little backpack with my toy soldiers. And we go to the railroad station, and everybody else does too. Everybody's shoving, and the train pulls in, and they start going in. My uncle picks me up and puts me through the window, and I sit down on the seat and stretch my foot out. And people are coming. He says, "Hey, kid, move away. We want to sit down." I said, No. My mom is coming. My mom is coming. She needs to sit down. And I start crying. Well, next thing you know, my mom is at the door. I'm relieved. We sit down, and the train starts moving, and the people there open their little. In those days, you didn't have in Yugoslavia, you didn't have a dining car. You brought your food with you. So they pulled out the fried chicken, and they had baskets full of food, and we start talking to each other, and we are going on the train. I get on the window and look out to this scenery, and as I'm looking, suddenly the train comes to a stop. Screeching stop. So everybody says, "What's going on? What's going on?" So my mom, she gets up and finds the conductor. She says, "What's going on?" He says, "Well, madam," he says, "we can't go any further. The Germans blew up the bridge across." So there we are in a train ready going to Zagreb, and we can't go there. So she says, "Well, how can we get to the other side?" He says, "Well, there is a barge about a mile away, and if you pay him some money, he'll take you across." So my mom said, "Okay," grabs my backpack, puts my backpack on, and off we trudge to the place, find the barge. She finds some money and, of course, pay him. We get across, and then we walk back to the railroad station on the other side and try to find a train that goes to Zagreb. Well, we find out that the next day there's a train a freight train that's going there. She says, good, we'll take it. So the freight train comes in, we pile in, and they seat me on the brake, big brake thing in the front of it, and the train starts moving, and I'm pretending I'm driving the train, and we're going nicely to Zagreb. Luckily, in Zagreb, there were two stations. One was a passenger station, and the other one was the freight station. Well, the train went to freight station, and we lived about 2-3 blocks from there. So we get out, walk to our apartment, and climb up. And my mom didn't have the keys because we had a maid. And she rings the bell, and the maid opens the door, and she says, oh, I am so sorry. My mom says, sorry? Why? Why are you sorry? He says, I had to let him in. I said, who did you let in? She says, there are 2 German soldiers in your bedroom. And my mom says, you did the right thing. Don't worry about it. Can I use your bathroom? My mom was vain, okay? Stayed vain till the last minute that she lived, okay? And she says, she went in the bathroom. Our maid had a little bathroom and her own room. And she washed her face, put lipstick on, combed her hair, and came back to see the Germans. Well, this German officer comes out, and I named him Otto Kruger, because I don't remember who it was. So Otto Kruger comes in, how do you do, madam? And he starts talking in Croatian. And my mom says, oh, why don't you speak German? We will speak German. And he grinned from ear to ear that somebody could talk to him. And he says, well, he says, I'm sorry we are intruding on you. He says, we are headed to the Greek front. We'll be gone in a day or two till we get all the troops together. And my mom says, oh, that's okay. And she says, I can move into the guest room rather than in your room. My mom said, no, stay there. We'll stay in the guest room. And I'm observing all of that. And I noticed on the side is a rifle. So I run back to my toy chest and I rummage around. I pull my pop gun, and I come out. He says, I have a gun too, in German, because I spoke fluent German. And he looks at me, he says, that's no gun, here. And he takes his rifle and he puts it in his hand. And I said, oh, it's heavy. He says, you're not ready for war. He says, then he looks at me, he says, I have a son about your age, Hans. And we live I'm from Schwabing, a little village outside of Munich. He says, you remind me of him. And he pulls out his wallet and he opens it up and he says, this is Trudy, my wife, and this is Hans. And I look at him, I said, could I play with Hans? And he says, yeah, when the war is over, he says, you can come to Schwabing. You guys will have a great time. He was a good person, okay, in a situation that he didn't want to be there. He had a family. He was, going probably getting killed, in the war. So anyway, he told my mom, he says, well, we have to leave by tomorrow. So they're packing. They took their stuff and they left. And he thanked my mom, and as soon as he closed the door, my mom turned over to the maid and she said, good riddance. And I was so mad because I really enjoyed having soldiers. I had 10 soldiers. Here's the real one with a real life rifle. And so I was very disappointed that they had to leave. Anyway, so everything started going tighter and tighter in the city. Now I asked the kids, and I'm asking you, what do you think was the first thing that the Germans did? They went to the Jewish Community Center, and we had a synagogue. By the way, the synagogue was totally demolished, erased. It's a parking lot now. They still haven't rebuilt it. Anyway, uh, uh, so all the Jews had to register. And then the next poster showed up, said, the Jews are not allowed to be on the street after 8 o'clock. Well, guess what? They had a problem. And you know what what do you think the problem was? If you look around here, and I know you're strangers, can you just looking at somebody, can you tell me who is Jewish? No. But if I take this sign and put it on this lovely lady here, you can definitely tell it here. I have a bigger one. And what does this mean? This identifies you as a Jew. In Croatian, Z is, we have a phonetic language, so there's no spelling B's. So Z is pronounced Z. If you put a hook off, it's a J. And Židov in Croatian means Jew. Do you know how much this sign is worth? About 30 ounces of gold. Because every Jew had to pay money to get this sign printed. So insult to injury, okay? My dad had to collect my mom's rings or whatever he had to get to melt it or just donate it, just wait it. So the Jewish Communities Organization had to make those signs, and everybody who got one. Well, my dad showed up with a sign and he says, here, you got to wear this. And he gives one to my mom, and he has one for himself. And I said, where's my sign? And I've never seen him so mad. He says, you don't need a sign. You're a child. I said, I'm not a child. So I ran again to my toy chest. I got a piece of paper and yellow crayon, and and of course I made it backwards. And I came out, he says, look, see, I have a sign too. And my dad was very, very calm person, but I've never seen him so upset. He grabbed that sign and ripped it off of me. Of course, I started crying. He says, I told you don't have to wear that sign. So everything they arrested. Oh, I want to show you, I almost forgot. I promised you that you would see my cousin Srečko. If you look at here, this is Srečko, 21 years old, went to college already, has a girlfriend, and he is they volunteered to go and build up our country, to build the trenches and the roads. He never came back. His father also was taken, never came back. My grandfather, who was in Belgrade, was taken into a van, enclosed van, with all the rest of the older Jews, and the gas was pumped into it. They drove it around the town, and drove it into the countryside where they had a ditch already, and they dumped all the people in. So those were the people that I lost, relatives. The rest of us, we managed to survive. So then they arrested my dad, okay? And my mom went to he had friends. He was doing business with Germany, so his German person that he worked with, she went to him and he said, you got to help me. They arrested my husband, and I got to get him out of there. She said, well, I'll help you. He says, but this is after this, I don't know you. I'll deny that I ever met you. But what I'll do is I'll write you a note saying that I need your husband to get something out of customs and get a 24-hour pass so he could do the work for Germany, because he was importing stuff for Germany. And so he says, after that, get away from here. Get as far as you can get. And my mom thought we're not allowed to travel. Jews were not allowed to travel. So anyway, she went to the police station, showed them the pass, the request for the pass. They let my dad out. Right away, we moved. My paternal grandfather lived in Zagreb, and we moved to his apartment. And now, what do we do? How do we get out of here? Well, we found out Milan and Annika, our friends, were already in Italy. They found out that if you were Catholic, you could travel. So my mom says, fine. So we went, my mom and my dad and I went to the church. They were baptized Catholic. 10 minutes later, I was baptized Catholic. And in those days, Catholics, they don't do it anymore. It's changed. In those days, they would give you a little bit of salt on a spoon just to realize how hard life would be, how bitter life would be. And of course, me, I assumed it was sugar. I took a big bite of it. And I started coughing. What do you do, a kid, you know? So they said, well, we'll go in. And I remember my dad preparing for it. First of all, my mom had a fur coat that the lining was full of $100 bills, because dollars were the only currency you could exchange. And my dad carved the heels of the shoes, carved it, put the gold coins in it, and then with poured wax on it so they wouldn't rattle, and then closed the bottom. So there he is. There's my mom. Yeah, you'll see them later. He's in the full suit. She's with it. And they said, we're going to Italy, but we'll send you to my dad's sister, who was married to a Catholic tailor in Brod. You remember the town right halfway to Belgrade? And I said, oh, but I want to go with you. He says, well, you can't come with us. We don't know what's going to happen. We might have to walk through the mountains. He says, I can walk through the mountains. They wouldn't take me, okay? And so they sent me to my aunt Babush in Brod, and I became a good Catholic boy. I actually attended first grade, and I want to read to you a little bit of how it felt to be in the first grade. My aunt Babush took me there, and she says, as she leaves, I don't hug her goodbye. I'm a big boy now, and I'm too embarrassed to hug her in front of the other children. I climb upstairs to the 2B room. There's a large blackboard and a crucifix hanging on the wall in front of the children sitting in individuals' desks. The teacher is a nun, like the nuns I used to see in Zagreb, but this one had a black habit and a white wimple. And she looked so stern. And she says, you can sit there, she announced. We start the class with our prayer. And there were some Jewish kids in the class. She said, since the Jewish kids are not allowed to say a Lord's Prayer, they are to stand there against the wall. So a couple of kids get up and line up against the wall. And I sit at my chair, and I feel like one of them, I should join them, but I was told not to tell anybody I'm Jewish. From the corner of my eyes, I see the kids with the sad faces because they're like yearning to be like the rest of the children. And not outcast or rejects, not defective. Can they read my mind and tell me, oh, he should be with us there, he is Jewish? And I avert my eyes and bury my head in my hands and mouth the words of the Lord's Prayer, pretending that I am one of the good Catholic boys. So, everything was good because after I actually started second grade in Broad. First of all, my aunt Babush was one of the best. She was one of the best cooks, and her a little bit younger sister was the next best. And so I had good food. They had my uncle Stefko, her husband. They had twins, a boy and a girl, Hansi and Greta, Hansel and Gretel. And they were like 14 years old. I was like 7. Well, they spoiled me. I had the best time. Those 2 years that I was there, I really enjoyed it. I didn't know what was going on. And everything was going fine. I started almost halfway through the day. One evening, we're sitting having dinner, and there's a knock on the door. Yes, my uncle says, "Who is it?" "Police." "Police, what can I do for you?" And they said, "We have a warrant for Lubo's arrest." And he says, "Arrest? He's an 8-year-old kid. He just turned 8. He said, "Sorry, we got to take him into jail." So my aunt volunteered. She says, "I'll go there as a hostage, and he can stay here." I said, "No, madam, this is what it says. We have to take him." And so the 2 guys take me by the hand, and off we go to the jail, and open the door, and this is an empty room. And the only thing there is a little chair. And he says, "Sit there." I sit on the chair, and he walks away. The 2 policemen walk away. Next thing, the door opens, and a guy comes in with a comb and the scissors and one of these clippers. And I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "I got to shave." He shaved my head off. Why? Because if I ran away, they could right away be able to tell that I was in jail. So he shaved my head, and then he left. And I'm sitting there, and then the guard comes in and says, "Come on with me." And he takes me to the cell. Now, because I was 8 years old, they didn't put me into the men's cell. They put me in the women's cell, where it was full of women, children, older ladies, the last people that they rounded up, all Jewish. Okay, and I'm sure that the same thing was in the men's room. And one of the ladies puts a little blanket for me, and I lay down and I fall asleep. The next morning I wake up, and I notice there's a backpack next to me, and I open it up, and they're my toy soldiers, and I start playing with them. And next thing you know, I hear music coming from outside of the window. And everybody runs, and they're looking out. And I said, "Oh, that's a religious procession I was supposed to be in. I want to see it." So one of the women picks me up, and I grab the bars, and I can just look out, and there's my cousin Greta walking. There's tears coming down her. She sees me, and there's tears coming down. Now I'm trying to yell to her, "Greta!" Nothing is coming out, no sound, because I was so ashamed with a shaven head, being in jail, and being outcast. I was, and I could not say anything. So anyway, they walked by, and I start playing again with my toys, and the guard comes in and says, "Who is Lubo here?" And I said, "That's me." He says, "Come with me." And so I get up to go. He says, "Take your backpack." So I take my backpack, and he puts me on the chair again. And I look at him and says, "They shaved my head already." And he says, "Just sit here." So I sit there, and he walks away. Next thing you know, the door opens up, and the chief of police is there. Well, in uniform. He says, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, You're my friend's father, because I played with his son." He says, "No, here I'm the chief of police, and I know everything that's going on. I know if anybody misbehaves. Can you behave?" "Yes." He says, "I can hear you." "Yes, sir." He says, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to leave the room, and you're to count to 10. Not fast, not slow. You just count to 10 normally. When you reach 10, you grab your backpack and see the door there, you walk out and you go home. Straight home. You don't go dawdle, you don't run, you just go home. And as he was leaving, he looks at me and says, good luck, kid. And so as soon as he slammed the door, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, get up, grab my bag, and I run like the wind, and I'm home at my aunt's. Of course, everybody hugs me, and they're all happy that I got out. I got out at 6 o'clock in the evening. At midnight, everybody that was there was on a train, freight train, to Auschwitz, to Germany, through Zagreb, through Germany. So I missed the train by 6 hours. Well, right away when I came home, they found a peasant that had a cart and a horse, and they put me in the back of the cart and covered me with a blanket, and he drove me to the village, to his village. And I stayed with him for about a week or two till things calmed down. And in the meantime, my aunt was able to find a lady that could take me to my parents in Italy. And she came, and she had a son about my age, okay? And in those days, you know, your passports, nowadays even babies have passports, you know. In those days, you had a passport, and you had his mother's name, and then the name of the child was just written. So she was Milica Miller. She was a German origin, Yugoslav or Croatian, and her son was Vlado. So I became Vlado Miller, and we took the train from. And you know the geography already. We took it to Fiume and Rijeka. Now my parents were not allowed to travel because in Treviso they were internati di guerra, which means they were interned because of the war. So they had to stay in Treviso, which was a nice little town with a river, beautiful place. But they had to report to the chief of police every Sunday. So they make sure that they are staying in place. And they couldn't be a burden to the Italian government. So the gold that they had, they parlayed it, you know, with black market and so on to live on. And so, and she didn't travel, she only traveled to Croatia. So what they did is they sent a priest to pick me up. And the priest picked me up in Fiume and Rijeka, and we took the train to Trieste and then to Treviso. And the whole way from there, he kept quizzing me about the Catholic religion. There's this little Jewish boy. I knew all the prayers because I actually went to a first communion, and I was baptized in Brod. You know, because I took a catechism for a year or two. So there's this little snot telling this priest, you know, every answer, and I still remember him laughing. He got such a kick out of me. So anyway, moving right on, I actually, in Treviso, started playing with the kids. As a matter of fact, we even went swimming to the little river by, and I ended up speaking fluent Italian, just playing with the kids. And every Sunday, we would get dressed up. I'm going to show you. Oh, okay, here's my first communion and baptism outfit. My uncle Stefko was a tailor, so I even used to go and help him take the stitches out of the, visit him, and he would put me to work to take out the stitches. So I was a tailor's assistant. But anyway, I think he made those. And here you can see my father with a suit. I can't see the shoes. My mom with a with a fur coat. My Uncle Mark, a little bit grown up. You can see his face. He never changed. He was always kind of he ended up being the richest of all three brothers, because his father my grandfather had a big furniture store in Belgrade, and my Uncle Larry went to Vienna to study Bauhaus, decorating, and my grandfather had one of the biggest furniture store in Belgrade, and Mark was lazy. He never cared about school. He didn't care about working. So my grandfather said, "You're going to learn a trade." So he put him to learn upholstering next door where they did the furniture. When he came to the States eventually, he opened what do they call it? The store fixing tapestry and he ended up with investing money, and he became the richest one. He retired when he was 40 and lived in San Rafael, right by the water. He had his garden. It was just this no ambition, but just for a good life. Anyway, let's see. So where we were? Oh, so anyway, so we report every Sunday. We get dressed up just like they must have been going. Oh, this is a friend of the family, and he kind of joined us because we kind of lived in a communal house, rented a villa, took different rooms. It was cheap, and so we report every Sunday. And Italians, being Italians, the chief of police makes espresso. And we go there. It was fun. We went there. One day we show up, and he says, "I have some good news for you." And everybody says, "Yeah, what are the good news?" He says, "You don't have to come here anymore." And we said, "Yeah, what happened?" He says, "You're free." What happened was that Badoglio, who was a general in the Italian army, deposed Mussolini, who was like a Hitler to Italy, and he signed a peace agreement with the Allies, who were moving up the. You can see it. Let me see here. Oh, okay. Yeah, they were moving up the. They were up to here somewhere. They invaded Sicily in no time, and then they started moving, but they got stuck in the middle here. It's a mountain ledge, or a Monte Cassino, and the Germans fortified it, and they couldn't advance. So they got stuck there. But what happened is my mom said, "Well, since the Allies are not going to come, we'll move to Venice, because that's a port city, and the American fleet's going to be there any day." So we packed our little things that we had, suitcases, and we went to Venice. And here we, oh my God, I pushed the wrong button. Okay, here we are in Venice, and you can see my mom and I playing with the pigeons, and they sat, right here was a coffee house, and they had their little coffee every day. And I would just chase the pigeon. And everything's going fine. One day we come out, and this place is full of German soldiers having coffee. And my mom and we just backed up into the alley. Says, "There's something wrong with this picture." So my mom says, "Well, if the Allies are not going to come to Venice, we are going to go forward to them." And we went to Rome, and found an apartment that actually it was owned by a fascist who who was connected with Malta. He was a politician, and he and his mother escaped to Switzerland, and they rented it through a lawyer. So we had a 4-bedroom apartment for all of us, and except one room we're not supposed to touch. of course, my Uncle Mark, the first one, Jimmy had it open. And I still remember looking into that room, and it was like Alibaba's cave. There were paintings, there were sculptures, and all the walls were blank, but they had the outline where the sun didn't bleach it. And so we were out taking a picture. Oh, this goes here, this goes there. And we took all of that stuff and put it back up. And he had a library that wouldn't quit, all in Italian. But we were afraid to go out because the Germans would close the two sides of the street and then check everybody's passports or whatever they had. So we stayed in as much as we could. And they wouldn't let me play with the kids because, kids talk. So I stayed and I knew enough Italian and I read it. And, half of the time I couldn't understand but eventually I kind of figured it out. So I got a very good education. By the way, the safest place to go in those days in Rome was to the opera. Because if the Germans did anything to the opera, to close it or not allow, they would have had a riot. Italians loved their opera. And we used to sit way up in the Galleria, and they would bring out salami and wine, the bottles of wine, and they would boo if the singers didn't play, they would boo them from way up. And below, I still remember German soldiers, officers and German soldiers, all in the good seats. They were all having a good time. So I saw probably the best opera that a kid could come up with. Beniamino Gilli was a singer, Maria Caniglia, Tito Gobi, Aida, Tosca, you name it. I saw it as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid. And it remained, I didn't care too much for the music. I loved the scenery, how they changed and made it into a city. And the next thing you know, it was a nighttime. And so I made my own little theater, and I would perform for my parents and whoever was with us, and pass the time. So, how much time do I have?
Let's say 15 minutes. Then we'll do question and answer.
Yeah, no, let me just finish, but I'm just kind of timing myself.
15 minutes.
Perfect. So eventually the Allies came. We had to move because the friend of ours, Slavko Brenner, you saw the picture of him. He was a gambler, okay, and he went out. We stayed in the apartment, but he found that you could gamble in the hotel somewhere. And he gambled with some people, and he won a lot of money. So they blackmailed him. So what we had to do is just pack and move to a hotel, because he says, I don't have the money. They came and said, you got to pay us money. And he says, I don't have the cash, but if you come next week, I'll collect it and I'll pay you. So in that week, we moved to the other side of the town, which was hotel on the 5th floor. And this is where we're liberated, next to Piazza Barberini. There was a Piazza Barberini, and then there was street going in three or four directions. And I remember looking through the window and watching the American soldiers walking two lines. The foot soldiers were the first one that came in, and I wanted to go and greet them. And my mom said, no. You go down when I see the tanks and the trucks coming. And wouldn't you know it, she was right. Suddenly there were shots. And she said, I told you they would do something. See, you should listen to me. And what happened was that the soldiers were so tired, and everybody was hugging them and kissing them, that they just shot a couple of shots and everybody dispersed. And eventually the trucks came and said, okay, now you can go. And I was collecting candy. They were throwing candy and speaking English, which I knew because I went to a British kindergarten. I had the best currency you had to have for a kid, and that was candy. And I was trading with the kids for toys and so on. Anyway, the Allies came, and here they are, the soldiers on the roof. This was on the 5th floor, on the roof of the hotel. And this is my cousin Fred, who also eventually came to Rome, and myself and some soldiers. I don't even know who they were. And then here is my my mother and my dad smiling finally, and the family picture. So, so my dad decided to join the partisans, and here he is in Split in Croatia, and he was running a motor pool, and he hired all the German prisoners that worked in the Mercedes-Benz garages. He had the best motor pool. All the trucks were running like clockwork. My dad was very handy with machines, with cars and his hands, but he never recovered. His life was kind of ruined because of that. Anyway, you said I have 15 minutes?
No, now it's 10.
With questions?
Yeah, including.
Okay, the war ended. My parents unfortunately divorced. My mom met my stepfather, Frank, who was from a little island in Croatia, okay? But he came to San Diego when he was 15 years old. His father was a fisherman with a tuna fleet. He was from Croatia. And he went back just before World War I, married and had Frank. And Frank went to San Diego High. He was then he went to USC, played football, and was in the. He was a commander in the Navy. At that time, he was just an officer. And my mom saw this strapping, good-looking officer. That was it. That was the love of her life. And she ended up marrying him. Do you know where they got married? In the Vatican, in St. Peter's. I went to see the chapel. There was 3 chapels on each side. So here's this Jewish lady who had the papers that she was Catholic. And Frank was Catholic. The whole family was Catholic. And they came to San Diego. She came to San Diego. My parents divorced. I followed my dad to Zagreb. I went to junior high for 3 years. He got in trouble with, not trouble, but they wanted him to join the Communist Party. He said, I don't want any part of it. I've had it. And so he decided to immigrate to Israel. And here, this is the miserable boat we took. I don't think I kept any food in my stomach. Whatever I ate came out because I was so seasick. And first thing we did is my first job picking oranges. I probably ate more oranges because we didn't have oranges during the war. So I got heartburn. And here's the barracks we were in a kibbutz. And here are 3 friends of mine, Shimon, Nathan. Nathan is from Venezuela. Shimon is, I think, from Bolivia, if I remember right. And I'm from Yugoslavia. They spoke Spanish. I spoke Italian to them. After about 3 months, I was speaking Spanish. So I learned Spanish. I learned Hebrew, okay, which is the most difficult language. Nothing similar to it in anything else. It's ancient. Anyhow, so I learned something, but I always wanted to go to school. And I couldn't because my dad left Israel. He left Israel, went back to Italy, and I was left alone with my aunt who passed away. So before she passed away, she wrote to my mom. He says, you got to bring this kid into the States. He is just dying on a vine here. And she arranged for me to come. And I came just before I turned 21 to San Diego. Oh, this you can see the kibbutz life. Oh, this one just a performance that I was in. It was a celebration of the 25th year of the kibbutz. And here I am. I joined the Air Force. My aunt arranged it because I could go to school for 1 year learning fine mechanics, so I could fix the aircraft instruments. So I went to school. That was the training. I never went to high school. I had to take, when I came to the States, then in 1955, I came to the States, and my stepfather, Frank, he says, "Oh, I'll get you into San Diego High." And I said, "I'm 21 years old. What am I going to do with those kids? You know, stupid me." So I joined the U.S. Air Force. And while I was in the Air Force, first of all, I cleaned up my English, which was kind of shady. I took a GED test. I took up almost a year of college. I ended up buying a car. I established myself, came back to San Diego, and met my lovely wife there. and finished, got my degree at San Diego State in physics, because I always wanted to be an engineer. So I finally got, physics was the closest in those days. Just the transistors were just coming out. And we had a lovely boy born, Tony, who is about this tall, and he's now in San Diego. And then when I got the first job in Newport Beach, we had a girl, Nina. Nina lives in Italy. She went to, both kids went to college. She majored in graphic arts and then took an Italian class, and that was it. She became Italian. She went to graduate school in Italy, never came back. And she's still living there. And Tony married a lady. They have 2 boys. One is 27 now. He's I call him a wirehead. He's an engineer, and he's going for his master's degree in engineering at the same time that he's working for one of these artificial intelligence companies. Here's the good one. And the other one is, he liked money, so he went to accounting. And they adopted a little Chinese girl, Julia, who just started last year, started college. So I have nice grandkids. No great grandkids, but we're working on it. And I want to, end with that and open the room to your questions, because I rambled for long enough. It's your turn, and ask me anything you want to know. I'll answer it as honestly as I can. Okay? Yes.
How many languages do you speak?
How many languages I speak? I speak 7 languages. I started with Croatian. Then I was in a British kindergarten, so I learned, then I learned German from a nanny. Then I was in a British kindergarten, Montessori. They had one side was French, the other one was English. I was in the English kindergarten, so I spoke pretty passable English. And even during the war, we were helping each other. And there was a lady that was single, and she was teaching English. So here during the war, I was taking English classes. Just it was a good way to give her money. Rather than just give it to her, she kind of earned it. And so then I spoke German. So Croatian, English, German. Went to Israel. I learned Spanish. I learned Italian and English. And 3 years that I lived there, I had to take Russian because Tito was friends with Stalin, and we had to learn Russian. And who taught the Russian was a white Russian officer that escaped from the communists, and he got caught in Zagreb. He was living in Zagreb, and he was an older gentleman, and he would teach the class, and he was a big man. We were just little kids, 14-year-old, 15, and he was quiet in the Galleria, Mikhail Spasov. We were all afraid of him. Yes.
I have a question for you. So are you now Catholic? Are you Jewish? Are you non-denominational? Or
Oh, that people always ask me. I remain a human being. Okay? And, you know, having experienced what I did, I met a lot of people. A lot of people knew I was Jewish. A lot of people didn't know I was Jewish. I met a lot of Jewish. I found out from my experience that we're basically all alike. Okay, we just managed to find differences between us. Okay, for whatever reason, and so I decided that's who I am. I am me. Take it or leave it. Yes, yes, back there.
Why did the
You know what? I am a little bit hard of hearing, so enunciate.
why did the police chief let you go?
Okay, good question. Good question. My uncle was a tailor, but he was well educated. He actually, believe it or not, he was a member of a communist party. He was in a cell, and he was a good communist. Okay, he really believed in it. He also spoke Esperanto, which was a language that they, international language they were promoting so that people would be speaking the same language. And he documented what was happening on pieces of paper about no bigger than this, on a, you know, tiny, tiny writing of how he got all arranged everything for me to get out. He vouched his own children. As a matter of fact, he was Catholic. Okay, nobody knew that my aunt was Jewish in the town, or maybe they did and they didn't care. I don't know. And I actually nominated him to be a righteous among nations. So 2-3 years ago, he was nominated. So his name is on the wall of the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. And I provided it. If you read my book, I translated all his notes. My mom saved all this stuff. She saved that sign. She saved letter from my uncle, who was prisoner of war officers, Serbian officers in Germany, and she saved the notes that she was sending him packages. She was sending him letters, and the reason he survived is because all the Serbian officers that were taken prisoners were shipped to the northern part of Germany, Osnabrück, and they said no. They wanted to take the Jewish officers and put them in a concentration camp. They said no. He's a Serb of Moses' persuasion, and they wouldn't let him go. She says no. You got to go by the Geneva Convention, and that is what kind of made me write the second book about me and Hans. I always wanted to meet Hans, so I meet him in this book, okay? And he had this similar problems. He was Hitlerjugend. He was trained, he was like 12 or a little bit older than me, trained to shoot the bazooka at the Russian tanks. So he had a rough life, different than me. And we end up, you know, if you read the book, you'll see how they got. And they got connected through my uncle that was in the prisoner of war camp. Because anyway, I'm giving away the book, so you have to read it. Yes?
But how did your uncle know the officer?
What happened? Oh, good question. But it's all in the book. What happened? Read the book. So I'll tell you how it happened. The Otto Gruber was headed to the Greek front. Okay, and when he got to the Greece, they occupied the town, and they collected 18. This is all fiction, by the way, based on true. They collected 18 Jewish people from the village. And he was assigned to take him to the woods, and they dug a ditch, and he was supposed to shoot, and the officer, the soldiers that are with him would shoot kill all the Jews. Well, I made it so that he's ready to fire the gun, but the partisans, the Greek partisans, which, by the way, they were fighting the Germans, shoot him, and they hit him in the leg, and he falls in the ditch. Okay, so he was almost ready to shoot. So what they did, the Germans did, they took the commander of the prisoner of war camp and sent him to the Russian front. And because he was walking with a cane, he became the head of the camp. And because my uncle spoke fluent German, he was kind of like an interpreter. And they started talking, and he says, oh, well, I was in Zagreb, and he says, well, my sister, and that's how the connection. And then it evolves, so it gets fictionalized. Yes.
The last question will be this wonderful gentleman who came from
Yes.
Seattle.
How did you retain this archive of pictures over your life? Because some of them, many of them are you and your family younger. Who gathered these? How were they preserved?
We all did. I gathered the pictures that were left over in Yugoslavia. I had albums made up of whatever I could collect. My aunt, her sister lived in Zagreb, so she found them. My mom, I don't know where she kept it. She traveling with a little suitcase. She had everything. She had the sign. She had the pictures, all the pictures. She has in this book here. I have documentation of the camp, pictures of the camp, which and the letters that they could write, which had to be written in German, so Germans could make sure. And you see them crossing out things that couldn't go through. She kept all of this stuff. There are receipts here for packages that she was sending to him, and his letters to her. She cherished all that stuff, and she lived to be how old was she?
She'll be 93.
93, and her house was full of, she saved everything. And my sister, half sister, I have a half sister and half brother, okay, from Frank, from her husband. And they came, my sister and her husband came, they stayed in the house for 3 or 4 days and cleaned the house when she was done. So I don't know, there are more stories that I didn't tell you of things that we had. How we kept them, I don't know.
Well, let's hear it first.
Well, thank you very much.